Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of March 24th, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Avalos.
Here.
Avalos present. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Christensen.
Present.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen not present. Supervisor Farrell.
Present.
Farrell present. Supervisor Kim. Kim not present. Supervisor Marr.
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener.
Present.
Wiener present. Supervisor Yee.
Present.
Yee present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
There are no communications, Madam President.
And I'd like to acknowledge for the record we are joined by Supervisor Kim and Supervisor Cohen. Madam Clerk, can you please read the consent agenda?
Items 1 through 6 comprise the consent calendar. These items are considered routine unless a member objects. An item may be removed and considered separately.
Colleagues, would anyone like to sever any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 1 through 6, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
These items are passed and approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 7 is an ordinance to retroactively authorize the Department of Technology and Contract Administration to enter into the Second Amendment of an agreement between the City and AT&T for telecommunications services and extending the term of the agreement through December 31st, 2015, and increasing the not-to-exceed amount to approximately $98 million.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 8 is an ordinance to amend the Administrative Code to provide procedures for the issuance of power revenue bonds by the Public Utilities Commission.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item 9, ordinance to approve the issuance and sale of revenue bonds by the Public Utilities Commission in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $48 million to finance various capital projects consisting of reconstruction or replacement of existing water and or electric facilities.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 10 is an ordinance to retroactively authorize the Office of the Treasurer Tax Collector to accept and expend a $100,000 grant from the Earned Assets Resource Network for implementing the Office of Financial Empowerment Kindergarten to College program and amend the annual salary ordinance in fiscal years 2014-15 through 15-16 to provide for the creation of one grant-funded position.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 11, ordinance to amend the Business and Tax Regulations Code to repeal Article 3, which contains a license requirement and tax on transient merchants.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 12, ordinance...
Oh, before we move to the next item, Supervisor Marr, Supervisor... Oh, actually, that's the next item. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 11?
Madam President, I believe you were correct. We are on item 12.
Oh, we are?
Yes.
Okay. Can we have a motion to excuse Supervisor Marr and Supervisor Avalos? Motion by Supervisor Farrell, seconded by Supervisor Yee. Without objection, these two are excused. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on item number 12?
Madam President, I'll read the item first. Item 12 is an ordinance to authorize settlement of the lawsuit filed on March 27, 2012 by the people of the state of California by and through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District against San Francisco for $31,000. approximately.
Okay, roll call.
On item 12, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. There are 9 ayes.
This ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 13 is an ordinance to amend the San Francisco General Plan by repealing the 2009 housing element and adopting the 2014 housing element and making the appropriate findings.
Roll call vote.
On item 13, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Nope.
Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr. Marr, aye. There are 10 ayes and 1 no, with Supervisor Farrell in the dissent.
This ordinance is finally passed. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item 14 is a resolution to retroactively approve the option to extend 2 temporary access and use licenses through July 31st, 2015 for access, use, maintenance, and operation of public infrastructure improvements at or near the intersection of 7th Street and Mission Bay Drive.
Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back, Rick. It's nice to have you back in the chamber. I've got an amendment to item number 14. Colleagues, this was an item that we heard in the Land Use Committee last week. At the request of our clerk, I'll be recommending a few cleanup changes to remove a vague reference that the department has the authority to enter into other undefined official acts. You should have received a copy of those proposed changes. The Department of Public Works has accepted these changes and also want to acknowledge that they are non-substantive. I would like to make a motion that we make these amendments as circulated. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Cohen has made a motion to amend item number 14. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Tang. Can we take those amendments without objection? Without objection, those amendments passed. Supervisor Kim.
Sorry, before that, I actually was hoping you could I'm just reading this for the first time now, and I think I largely agree with this. I was just hoping that I could get a quick summary because I'm not reading quickly enough.
Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. So it's just cleaning up language. So in line number 6 on the first page, it's a strike through authorizing other official acts. It's been taken out.
That's not what I'm not sure if I'm looking at the wrong sheet, but what I have is about also the program itself beyond the labor harmony. I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry.
Thank you. So it's just removing that one reference. Are we in agreement? Can you support? Yes. Thank you. Okay, great. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Let's call the vote.
Okay. Supervisor Kim, are we good to go? Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 14 as amended, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you.
Supervisor Campos.
Supervisor Campos?
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Yes.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, this resolution is adopted as amended unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call item number 15.
Item 15 is a resolution to urge the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency Board to adopt a requirement that applicants demonstrate labor harmony conditions as part of the commuter shuttle pilot program and any other permanent commuter shuttle programs.
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, before us today is a resolution urging the Municipal Transportation Agency, as part of its permitting process for commuter shuttles, to take into account labor harmony or lack thereof with respect to the shuttle providers and their workforce. San Francisco's commuter shuttle program has proven to be an important way to keep cars off of our streets, to reduce congestion, and to reduce our overall the footprint of the greenhouse gas footprint of our transportation system. As a result of these shuttles, workers who live in San Francisco and commute to workplaces outside of the city and who would otherwise own and drive private automobiles are able to live car-free, or at least to reduce their car usage, getting us one step closer to the transit-first city that we all want to be. But while most of the conversation, the public conversation about these shuttles is focused on who is riding these buses and where they live and where they work, the resolution before us today is concerned with the people who are driving the buses, the workers who are driving the buses. These shuttles are operated by private companies that contract with large employers. The drivers work for these private shuttle operators and not directly for the companies whose employees are riding on the buses. These drivers are typically behind the wheel for 8 hours a day during morning and evening commutes, with standby time of up to 4 or 6 hours between morning and evening shifts. These standby times are often unpaid, and because these drivers may live in other parts of the Bay Area, they have no option but to wait in the bus during this middle of the day period. But just as importantly, because these shuttles typically share Muni bus stops, it's imperative that we as a city do as much as we can to minimize the risk of disruption to our transportation system resulting from any labor disputes around the shuttles. A labor dispute could create gridlock in our public transportation system. This resolution calls on the MTA Board of Directors to adopt a provision that would require commuter shuttle operator permit applicants to demonstrate labor harmony with their drivers when submitting for a permit to stop in Muni bus zones. The resolution does not define what labor harmony is, and it could mean a variety of things. And I look forward to working with the MTA Board of Directors to help craft a definition that is broad and that encompasses different approaches to demonstrating a commitment to minimize impacts on our transportation system while ensuring the fair treatment of the men and women who drive these shuttles. So, colleagues, I ask for your support on this resolution. I understand that Supervisor Avalos may have some amendments, and I will comment on those after he introduces them.
Thank you. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you very much. And it's interesting to have this resolution before us at this time. I support the underlying resolution. Really, the MTA Board of Directors can implement a labor harmony program without our intervention, without a resolution from us. But what's really unique about having this right now before me is that for a number of years now, our city has been engaged in a debate about how we regulate, how we make sure that the shuttle companies properly pay for the impact that they have on the city, on our public infrastructure. That's something that is, debated and discussed everywhere, all over San Francisco, everywhere we go. And we have a resolution about the shuttle program, and we don't have any reference about this controversy that is at times tearing the city apart. And to me, I just couldn't really take this moment without, having the shuttle program before me in one way or another, without having a greater discussion about unfinished business that we have about a shuttle program, about the impacts of shuttles in San Francisco. I am a labor person. I support labor. I support better working conditions and labor harmony. Of course, I want to make sure we maximize the work and jobs of people in the city. But we have to balance that with the needs that we have in our neighborhoods. And this resolution, which is just about labor harmony, doesn't quite do that. So I wanted to add some language and just to make sure that we're discussing some of the things that I think a large part of the public would expect us to discuss when we're opening the door on our shuttle program, and that is really the impact impact of shuttle services on the rest of San Francisco. Our general plan discusses how we want to be able to divert automobile and commercial traffic from residential neighborhoods. I don't believe our shuttle program currently is following our general plan. It's in its guidelines around diverting that traffic. Policy 18.1 of our general plan says that major and secondary arterials are to carry traffic among districts in the city. Local streets are intended only to provide access to and from homes and other uses within each neighborhood. But I know there are many small streets. They could be commercial streets, but they're not arterials, that are clogged at times with major shuttle buses from the shuttle companies. And I don't believe that they actually play a good role on our small side streets. They should be they should be kept in our arterial parts of San Francisco. So I want to be able to follow General Plan 18.1 with some guidelines that we can add with amendments to this resolution. And they are as follows, and I have copies on all your desks, colleagues. It's on one page, and I don't know exactly where it fits with the overall resolution that's before us. It's at the very end, though, of that document. So a new resolve clause. Further resolve that the Board of Supervisors urges the San Francisco Metropolitan Transportation Authority Board to amend Transportation Code Section 914 to restrict commuter shuttle buses to using only major and secondary arterial streets that are not designated in the general plan transportation element as transit conflict streets. This is according to the general plan, right? And be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors urges the SFMTA Board to report on compliance with Transportation Code Section 914F5, which requires the shuttle service providers to provide the SFMTA with real-time location data for each commuter shuttle bus, and be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors requests the San Francisco Metropolitan Transportation Authority Board to analyze the shuttle bus location data to determine how their routes and stop locations can be modified to minimize delays to Muni bus service and to minimize shuttle bus traffic on high injury corridors and streets with bicycle lanes, and be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors urges the San Francisco MTA Board to conduct a nexus analysis to demonstrate the validity of the nexus between the commuter shuttle pilot program and increased wear on streets, delays to Muni bus service and traffic in general, and increased costs of producing affordable housing, and be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors urges the SFMTA Board to adopt a fee to recover the costs of the impacts demonstrated in the nexus analysis. Those would be my amendments that I'd like to make to this resolution. And just to say, I know I expect that there'll be a statement saying that this will delay this resolution from being passed. But I think, colleagues, all of us can give some indication that we will be supporting the underlying resolution here. And whether we support it or not, it doesn't really give the green light or not to the MTA Board to be able to implement a Harmony program for labor. So, colleagues, that would be my motion to add this language that I just read into the record to this resolution. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Avalos has made a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I will be voting against these amendments today. And I say this as someone I'd be happy to, as we have in the past, repeatedly, have a debate about the commuter shuttles. Happy to talk about the fact that a significant majority of the workers who ride these shuttles, if the shuttles went away or became so restricted that they were unusable, that a significant majority of those workers would stay in San Francisco and drive their cars, clogging up our city streets and our highways even more than they already are. I'd be happy to talk about the fact that I represent a district that is right there at the top when it comes to these shuttles in terms of residents in the district who ride on the shuttles and depend on them to get to work. as well as people who live on streets where shuttles go down and who have concerns about those shuttles being on their streets. I'd be happy to talk about the difference between the arterials and the side streets, because people live on the arterials too, and if you put all the buses only on a small number of streets, the people on those streets aren't going to be too happy about it. Happy to talk about the fact that when we restricted the number of muni stops that these shuttles could use, it meant that they were all funneled onto a smaller number of streets. It's a debate that I would always be happy to have, but that's not the issue that's before us. And if Supervisor Avalos wants to introduce a separate resolution to have this debate again, he has every right to do that, and I would look forward to engaging in that debate. This is about making sure that the drivers of these shuttles are treated fairly, that they are paid and have benefits and working conditions that we would expect in this city that values the contributions of working men and women. And so I understand that there is a dispute about whether the shuttle program should exist at all, where the shuttle should go, and so on and so forth. But that is not what this resolution is about. And so, colleagues, I will be voting against these amendments.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me say that I support the original resolution. I also support the amendments. I think that what Supervisor Weiner is trying to do with his resolution is important, and I will be supporting that effort. I think it's important to make it clear that we want the drivers and the workers to be protected. I think the issue here, and this is to our labor friends, because I know that they care about this issue, and while some want to narrow this issue to simply labor harmony and worker protection, which is important and critical, there is a larger issue that encompasses worker protections, and that's the issue of social responsibility. What we want is these companies to be socially responsible. And social responsibility encompasses a number of things. One of them is how our workers are treated. And that's an important consideration that we should make very clear, that we want those workers to be protected. But there is also other aspects of social responsibility. Is there responsibility to the larger society when you have companies that are using public space and public resources without properly compensating the public for that use? In this case, those of us who voted against the pilot, we're not against the benefits that the pilot provides. We're not in favor of people driving to work. We want them to take the shuttles as opposed to driving. But we also want these companies, to properly compensate the public that has invested in the public transit infrastructure that is being used. Likewise, social responsibility means respecting the rights and the concerns of neighborhoods, which quite frankly feel that they have been left out of the process in terms of determining how this is implemented, whether or not it is appropriate for some of these shuttles to be used in certain parts of residential areas. So it's all connected to this larger issue of social responsibility, and the labor piece is a part of it. It's an important part of it. But I actually think that as we look forward to this issue of what's happening with the so-called sharing economy, I think that we need to make sure that we don't divorce the various interconnected elements that are clearly connected. And so I think that's the point here. And that's why I support what Supervisor Avalos is saying. I think that there are larger issues here. It doesn't mean that we negate the importance of the labor piece, but it's one of many other issues that are important.
Thank you. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to a common statement that's put out there that people who are critical of the shuttle system, want it to go away, want to abolish it. There may be people who want to do that. That's not my intention. My intention is really looking at identifying whether we have the right kind of regulation for the shuttle system that we have in San Francisco, and also whether we are actually getting cost recovery for the impacts that the shuttle system exacts on our public assets. That, to me, is really the most important part of this debate, and that's what I've tried to kind of insert with the amendments that I expect we'll have a vote on in just a second. And just to kind of reinforce what Supervisor David Campos said, I do believe that it's important that we support the underlying resolution today around labor harmony, but I think this discussion is really a bit one-sided, especially when we know that this city is gripped by a debate that still continues, whether we've created a pilot program and feel like we've addressed the issues or not. This city is still gripped by the controversy that the shuttle system has that we have not quite resolved yet. And I think that we still have work, unfinished business to do that. So that's my intent about bringing up amendments to this resolution, and I will be considering bringing these forward in another way in the future.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Before we move to a vote for the amendments, Deputy City Attorney John Givner, can you please explain, if these amendments were to pass today, what the process would be?
Sure, Deputy City Attorney John Givner. If the amendment passes, the board would continue this item either to committee of the whole at the full board or send it to committee for further public comment. Either way, with the amendments, the resolution would require further opportunity for public comment.
Okay. Seeing no other members' name on the roster, on the motion to amend, we have a first and a second. So roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Tang?
Just a point of clarification, this is Supervisor Avalos' amendments?
Okay, yes. For point of clarification, this is to support or deny the proposed amendments by Supervisor Avalos to item number 15.
Thank you. No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Wiener?
No.
Wiener, no. Supervisor Yee?
Yes.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
No.
Christensen, no. Supervisor Cohen?
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Farrell?
No.
Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 5 ayes and 6 noes with Supervisors Tang, Wiener, Supervisor Breed, Christensen, Cohen, and Farrell with the dissenting vote.
Okay, the amendments fail. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on item number 15?
On item 15, Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 16?
Item 16 is a motion to appoint John Malcolm Hillen, Andrew Justin Sullivan, Dan Kidda, Dan Flanagan, Sandy Sherwin, and K. Rose Hilson to the Urban Forestry Council, terms ending November 18th, 2016.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, item number 17.
Item 17 is a motion to appoint Brenda Quee McNulty, Michael Seville, and Dion J. Brookter to the Citizens General Obligation Bond Oversight Committee, terms ending November 21st, 2016.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, item number 18.
Item 18 is a motion to appoint Brendan Rogers, Kevin Miller, Stephen Netzel, Regalado Baldonado to the Veterans Affairs Commission, terms ending January 31st, 2019.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, item number 19.
Item 19 is a motion to approve the President of the Board of Supervisors nomination, President London Breed, Richard Swig, to the Board of Appeals for a term ending July 1st, 2016.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, it is now 2:30, and at this time, I'd like to recognize Supervisor Katie Tang with a commendation today.
Thank you very much, President Breed, and thank you, colleagues, for indulging me, as today is really a bittersweet moment because we are saying farewell to someone from our San Francisco Police Department. I don't know if you know why you're here today, Deputy Chief Lynn Tomioka. If you can please come on up. I think that the police department had to surprise her to bring her in here. So today, really, as I said, it's very bittersweet for me to be doing this. Deputy Chief, has been with the city of San Francisco for over 26 years. And she graduated from the 167th recruit class back on June 1st in 1990. And after that, she worked a variety of assignments with our San Francisco Police Department, including patrol, plainclothes, street crimes, and gang activity abatement teams, internal investigations, and community and media relations. She has served at half of the police district stations, including Ingleside, Northern, Bayview, Mission, and Richmond. And she currently serves as the Chief of Staff for the department after being appointed to the position back in May 2011. Along with the duties of the Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief Tomioka is responsible for the day-to-day operation of the Chief's office, as well as legal administrative support functions for the department, including internal affairs. Her current projects include establishing policies and general orders, ensuring procedures related to limited English proficient communications to meet the needs of our community. She also oversees several programs which provide much-needed services to our youth, including Operation Dream, Future Graduates, the Wilderness Program, and the Police Foundation. So it is very sad for me to announce that her last official day with the San Francisco Police Department is March 27th. And we do have in our presence here today our police chief, Greg Sir, who I'll invite up as well if he would like to say a few words, if our colleagues have no objection, as well as a whole bunch of her colleagues here. We have many deputy chiefs here. Denise Schmidt from the airport, Hector Sainez from operations, Sharon Farino from administration, and Charlie Orks from Special Operations Bureau. Thank you all so much for being here. And since we have the chief here, just a funny story I wanted to share with all of you from one of our police commissioners. Oftentimes when Chief Sir asks his staff to do something, apparently they often have to ask first if he has asked Deputy Chief Tomioka. And he has to remind them that he is the police chief, but everyone says they have to check with her first. So just a little flavor of what she means to the department, to the staff. I know that I always love seeing Deputy Chief Tomioka around in the community. I'm really going to miss seeing you, but I know you'll still be around, probably in plain clothes. But thank you for your service to our San Francisco Police Department, and I want to wish you all the best in your retirement.
So thank you so much for recognizing truly my right hand. It's going to be gone soon. You couldn't list all the things that the Deputy Chief Tomioka does for the police department. On top of all her other things, she's also a fluent Samoan speaker and can calm any group of often people that include not only any of us, but sometimes folks that are a lot bigger than we are. She has a manner about her unlike any other, and she's actually is not going to be far, as she's decided that she's going to manage all the kids programs for our charitable side of the police department in her retirement. So anyway, she is the best. Your day.
Well, thank you very much. It's just been a privilege and an honor for me to serve San Francisco citizens. I think I have been truly blessed with seeing not only the sometimes worst in people, but the very best in people. And I think that just keeps me very focused and very balanced. And I really appreciate the welcome that San Francisco gave me 40 years ago when I came here as a student. And I have loved the city, and I will always love this city. So thank you for everything that you do, but especially thank you to the citizens of San Francisco, because it really is a privilege. Thank you.
Again, congratulations on your retirement. Okay, thank you for coming. At this time, colleagues, we're going to go to committee reports. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 28?
Item 28 was considered by the Government Audit and Oversight Committee at a regular meeting on Thursday, March 19th. It was forwarded as a committee report without recommendation as amended with the same title. It's an ordinance to amend the Administrative Code to establish the Balboa Reservoir Community Advisory Committee to advise the board and the mayor and city departments regarding any proposed development under the Public Land for Housing program and setting forth the membership and duties of the advisory committee.
Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, in front of us is legislation that would establish a 9-member Citizens Advisory Committee for the Balboa Reservoir Project. I have been working with neighbors, organized neighborhood associations, and merchants to ensure that this is a CAC, that this CAC is guarantees neighborhood representation. We now have 6 seats that are set aside for residents and business owners and education institutions that live or operate close to the reservoir. It was real important for me to make sure that the dominance of the membership would be filled with people that would be impacted directly. And in fact, when I put together the original CAC, there were actually 5 members, and with the input of the community, we added another one to ensure that there's at least 6 members that would be from the community. I believe it is very important that residents, business, and education institutions near the site are getting information from the city about the project every step of the way and are given a say in the decisions that are made. I envision a Citizens Advisory Committee to be a place where everyone can get the most updated information that the city has and have the necessary conversations about the development on the site. We had a thoughtful discussion at the GAO committee, and I introduced amendments to respond to the concerns of the members of the public and to ensure that residents and local business owners who will be the most affected are adequately represented. I see this CAC as a fundamental meeting place for a very important project in my district, probably beyond my district, and it's really an important project for the city. And I hope, colleagues, that I can count on you for your support today to give the neighborhood a strong voice.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair to Supervisor Yee, I have a couple questions for you. Your aide did come by to brief with my office. Thank you for that. I'm just trying to better understand how about the coordination with the Balboa Station Committee. How do you plan to work together?
Well, one of the members...
Supervisor Yee, I just have to recognize you.
Sure. sometimes I have to recognize myself. But actually one of the seats for this CAC, for the Balboa Reservoir project, is asking for somebody from the Balboa plan to be on this because we want to make sure that there's strong communication between the two bodies. Most area plans are for areas, and it gives general concepts to the area. And it's not that unusual to have another advisory committee that's specific to a project. So this project is within the area of the Balboa plan, but it's not one of the same. So for me, I want to have a CAC that's going to be focused on this particular project to give input and to assure that whatever the Balboa plan has come up with, that is consistent with that plan.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Cohen?
I've another question for you. We received a letter for item number 28 on our desk from one of your constituents who's recommending the Ocean Avenue Association. Is that organization represented on this body?
The Ocean Avenue Association does a lot of work through these on a corridor, and the membership of that association the minority of the membership are business people. So I wanted to make sure that we have a wide enough scope of possibilities for business owners to be participating in this. And that's why I didn't specifically identify that particular association to name a business person. Because if you look at the membership, it's really mostly residents.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Kim?
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. It's my understanding that this ordinance just establishes the CAC, and that if a member of the Ocean Avenue Association wanted to apply for one of the seats, they're certainly welcome to, and there will be a vetting process after we pass the legislation by which we determine who the membership is.
Right. I mean, there's most of the seats actually are fairly open to overlapping interests here. Some of our roles specific to an association, but one could be living at OMI and be a business person. One could be associated with another education institution that's going to be impacted and live in the district. So there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of commitment between our office and the mayor's office to look at that piece of it where there are some general definitions for membership to look at within District 7 and 11 to see if there's somebody that would qualify for these seats. So yes, there's the possibility of the Ocean Avenue Association recommending a business person could be the person that's going to serve.
Thank you. Supervisor Kim, are you done?
Yes.
Supervisor Avalos?
Thank you, President Breed. So colleagues, I did work, or I was consulted by Supervisor Yee on this this legislation, and there are many people in my district who have been aware of this project at the Balboa Reservoir, want to see it move forward, and want to be able to express, what their concerns are to help shape how the project moves forward. And there are seats for District 11 residents who will be on here. There is, as Supervisor Yee mentioned, there's also a seat for a member of the Balboa Park Station Area Citizens Advisory Committee to be on here. And before crafting this legislation, Supervisor Yee also worked with a member of the committee who's actually very, very well versed in affordable housing construction, Robert Muehlbauer. And so I do believe that this is a good balance between District 7 and District 11, and I will be supporting this legislation.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Not seeing any other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, item 28, this ordinance is passed on the first reading. Okay, let's go to roll call for introductions.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Wiener, you're first to introduce new business.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, first just some good news. You may recall that, and I want to thank you for this, for approving the acquisition of the site of the future Noe Valley Town Square, where we purchased the site with Open Space Acquisition Fund money. And that project is moving forward. There's been significant private fundraising, and we recently were awarded a grant from the state. And so today I'm introducing an acceptance of that grant, and that will move us very close to having all the funds in place to do the physical transformation of the space from a parking lot to a town square. It's a great project, and again, I want to thank you, colleagues, for your support of it. I also have an in memoriam today for Farrell Powell, who was a resident of Caselli Avenue in the Castro. She was a cherished member of the San Francisco community, and she passed away on March 13th while traveling in Thailand. She was a mere 52 years old. She was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1962. She lived in Euclid, Ohio, and graduated from Euclid High School. She earned her chemical engineering degree at Cleveland State and her master's of biomedical engineering at the University of Akron. She ultimately became the chief executive officer of eValve, and she successfully led the effort to take the MitraClip device from concept to product, and through multiple rounds of venture financing that led to the final acquisition of the company by Abbott Laboratories. She then joined Abbott as divisional vice president and general manager of a newly formed structural heart unit. She began a 4-year quest to gain FDA approval to make the MitraClip device available to U.S. patients suffering from mitral regurgitation. It was eventually approved in 2013. Farrell was one of a handful of female CEOs in her field. She mentored many young entrepreneurs through the Stanford Biodesign program, and she recently mentored the founders of a startup called Prescient Surgical and became board chair. She was actively involved in the American Heart Association, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, the Horizons Foundation, the Voss Foundation, the Women's Initiative for Self-Employment, and many other social impact organizations. She was an avid photographer who liked all kinds of adventure travel, and a great supporter of local artists as well as the work of her friends. She's survived by various loving family members, and she is someone who will be greatly missed by the many, many people whose lives she touched. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Today I'm requesting a hearing on the impacts of small businesses during large construction and streetscaping projects. While there are many long-term benefits from renovations and street improvements, local and national studies have shown a decrease in revenues for businesses during construction projects. In fact, we've seen businesses close because of that. In my own district, many of the merchants are deeply concerned about losing business during an upcoming infrastructure and tunnel project. We would like to have a hearing to see how businesses are being affected by projects citywide and to explore ways the city can better support them. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Avalos.
Submit.
President Breed.
Thank you. Colleagues, today I am introducing a series of legislative changes to update and improve San Francisco's Campaign Finance Reform Ordinance, or the CFRO. San Francisco has some of the strongest campaign finance laws in the country, and rightly so. Our citizens are entitled to know who is trying to influence their votes or the votes of their elected representatives. Unfortunately, though, our campaign finance laws are not a single streamlined construct. They are the product of decades of differing and sometimes overlapping efforts, which often differ and overlap with state laws. What we are left with is an immense patchwork of regulations whose complexities can undermine the very goal of transparency and accountability we seek to achieve. For example, under the current campaign finance reform ordinance, one must consult 5 different sections of the law to find all of the different disclaimer requirements for campaign advertisements. An independent group, such as a neighborhood political club, can be required to file 2 different forms at 2 different times just to report a single campaign mailer. This complexity makes it harder for the average voter to assess the information being disclosed, and it can be troubling. It can send a troubling message to smaller organizations, and grassroots candidates don't bother getting involved. The CFRO should promote inclusion, not discourage neighborhood groups from participating or make good people reluctant to run for office. So in partnership with the Ethics Commission, I am introducing this legislation to streamline, update, and improve San Francisco's campaign finance laws. First, the legislation brings our laws into compliance with recent court decisions by removing local campaign contribution limits that have been struck down. The limit on an individual's total contribution in an election has been unenforced by the city since the Supreme Court's decision, McCutcheon versus the FEC opinion in 2014. The limits on contributions to PACs has been unenforced by the city since the District Court for the Northern District of California enjoined enforcement in 2007. Second, the legislation consolidates and streamlines reporting requirements for third-party groups that distribute ads or mailers in city elections. It requires any spending outside groups of 1,000 or more during the 90-day prior to an election to be disclosed within 24 hours. And it requires copies of election-related communications sent by these third-party groups to be filed with the Ethics Commission if the communications cost $1,000 or more. Thirdly, the legislation simplifies the rules for the disclaimers on the campaign-related ads or mailers. These are the paid-by-for disclaimers in print and on ads that help voters understand who is behind a certain message. Our changes improve upon state disclaimer requirements by mandating a larger font, 12-point, on mass mailers and smaller written materials, imposing a lower $20,000 threshold for disclosing top donors, and require a reference to information available on the Ethics Commission's website. Altogether, these smart disclosures will simplify and improve the CFRO's reporting and disclaimer requirements, making information more accessible to the public and making compliance easier, particularly for grassroots candidates and smaller neighborhood groups. The Ethics Commission passed these changes unanimously in January, and I want to thank the Commission and their Executive Director, John St. Croix, and thank you to my colleagues for your consideration. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Campos.
Clerk, if you can
re-refer. Okay. Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you. In a couple of weeks, State Senator Mark Leno will again ask his colleagues in Sacramento to amend the State Ellis Act. I'm asking that we buttress these efforts by passing a resolution affirming our support. The legislation will return to San Francisco some control over management of its housing policies. The new guidelines will impact only San Francisco and will decouple our city from other municipalities in the state that do not experience, or in many cases even understand, our city's unique housing challenges. There have been concerns that changes to the Ellis Act might place an unfair burden on small property owners. The legislation addresses these concerns with exemptions that exclude small and long-term property owners from the reach of the legislation. The legislation is aimed at speculators and serial evictors, largely LLCs and corporations, that have abundant choices in how to invest capital and turn a profit. Through this legislation, we are strongly suggesting that they choose to make their money in some way that does not involve evicting residents from their homes. Ellis Act evictions are climbing again, with 215 occurring last year, plus numerous buyouts which precluded yet more evictions. Last year, nearly one-third of evictions were done by serial evictors and speculators, and more than half of owners who used the Ellis Act to evict tenants had owned their buildings for less than a year. Ellis Act evictions disproportionately impact older, impaired, working class, and middle-income residents. As we struggle to take 2 steps forward to add housing units, we take a step back with the loss of every rented building. The district I represent has, from its beginning, been made up of affordable neighborhoods, with small apartments in compact buildings filled with working people who traditionally worked in the neighborhood or nearby. People tend to stay put. Our buildings are older. As the economy has rebounded, more and more of our buildings are being targeted for flipping. Currently, in our district, the threat of eviction looms over the costume designer and the sound engineer from the neighborhood's iconic Beach Blanket Babylon revue, workers from our favorite restaurants, and a treasured artist, none of whom are likely to be able to remain in the area if they are evicted. But part of the root of this problem is that most of the affected buildings are in need of repair and upgrade, but they're occupied by tenants who are paying rents frozen at levels from decades past, making the buildings of little interest for any purpose other than speculation. A glimmer of hope has come from nonprofit groups and government agencies that are investigating and experimenting with options for acquiring at-risk buildings and sustaining them as rental properties, and in assisting tenants in purchasing their buildings. These are efforts we should understand and support. So in addition to this resolution, I'm also calling for a hearing to identify and review resources, programs, and other options for retaining at-risk properties as part of our housing stock. I will be calling on the Mayor's Office of Housing, nonprofit partners from the Council of Community Housing Organizations, the San Francisco Rent Board, and various other local agencies to fill us in on what they are doing to buy, finance, subsidize, or otherwise preserve existing apartments, and what we in city government can do to help. Lawrence Ferlinghetti turns 96 years old today. In his book of poems, San Francisco Stories, Lawrence warns of turning the island city into an artistic theme park without artists. Our constant challenge is how to move forward without losing the qualities that made each of us come or stay here in the first place, and without losing the people who have, since its inception, been the binding fabric of our city. Small housekeeping, I'm also submitting a resolution authorizing the MTA to execute a retail lease agreement with the Les Julien Jazz Club. It's in the Ellis side of the Ellis O'Farrell Garage. If I can shine a small light on this interesting club. Les Julien has occupied this location for over 30 years, hosting a long list of jazz celebrities and operating 365 days a year. I think most notably, OEWD take note, Les Julien has weathered the challenges of the nearby Central Subway construction and is seeking to enter into a new 10-year lease agreement in its current location. I'm also pleased to join the mayor in sponsoring resolutions supporting bond inducements for 2 affordable housing developments located in District 3's Chinatown. These bonds will provide financing for much-needed rehabilitation for a total of 142 low-income housing units and will improve the city's portfolio of affordable housing. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. So, colleagues, today I'm introducing a hearing on the status, the designation, and the implementation strategy of millions of dollars that's coming to the Bayview community. Last year, you may recall that I asked for an audit of our city's violence prevention services, and as a result of that audit, we learned that there are at least $208 million on violence prevention services over the last 5 years that has been spent. But there is no singular metric system in place to begin to identify our efforts and as to whether or not they are effective or not. So within the last year, the Department of Public Health has been awarded a $16 million state grant for on-demand trauma services. The San Francisco Unified School District has also awarded several $millions to implement trauma-informed strategies. Hope SF, as well as the Bayview Heal Zone, was awarded $5.5 million from the Kaiser Foundation. And last year, the District Attorney's Office was awarded a $1 million grant for community crime prevention strategies. So as you can see, there's a lot of money coming into the community. And so I'm calling for this hearing because I want to know a little bit more about the community needs, and I want to know a little bit more, as well as the community needs to know where that money is flooding and it's going, and how the money will be spent, and more importantly, when we can begin to see some of the results that we expect to see. So we are quite literally spending millions of dollars on public safety and violence prevention, and it has been and will continue to be my focus to make sure that the public dollars that we are spending are being used in a very effective manner. The rest I submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a few items today. First of all, introducing a hearing request to discuss our city's approach to regulating some new transit services that have emerged recently, Leap and Chariot in particular, that we're seeing in the Marina neighborhood in my district that has drop-offs and pickups downtown and in south of Market area. Both of these new services provide shuttle services from the Marina to downtown and Soma for a flat fee. They are indeed uncharted territories for our city, so I wanted to host a hearing to have an open discussion with the SFMTA and our Transportation Authority about what the city's approach is to regulating these services so that we can mitigate any violations that may be occurring, and also what are the impacts to our residents and to our quality of life in our neighborhoods. I do believe that these services are addressing an unmet need with some of the muni lines in my district in particular that are swamped, and particularly the 30 and 30 Stockton Express that are at or beyond capacity. And we need to approach regulation in a thoughtful way that allows these services to operate but sets firm guidelines under which they can operate, and also, again, keeps a strict eye on our quality of life in our neighborhoods. The volume in terms of what I'm directly hearing from constituents in my district is starting to rise, and I believe as a city we need to be proactive in our approach to these matters. Constituents are rightly calling in concerned that these services are blocking driveways, double parking, and all other manners of behavior that is causing congestions in our streets. In the meantime, I've been working with the SFMTA to enforce our existing laws and the levels of enforcement so that we can have adequate enforcement of bad behavior from these services in our neighborhoods. I know the SFMTA has been in discussion with our California Public Utilities Commission to discuss which steps, if any, are next from the state, and whether this issue completely falls under our local jurisdictional control or under the state. I have and know the SFMTA has been very clear when communicating with these companies that they need to abide by our current local laws, and also realize that we need to think of some short-term solutions as we continue to monitor this. From my perspective, I think these services, again, are serving an unmet need, but as they continue to grow in my district, and I do believe throughout the city of San Francisco, I've also heard from regional elected officials that they're growing in their areas as well. We need to think about long-term what we're going to do as a city with these services. I plan on hosting this hearing in about a month's time. Again, we'll have city agencies that are affected, as well as these services, to have a discussion about the future here in our city. And I do also have, unfortunately, 2 in memoriams today. First of all, I'd like to adjourn today's meeting in the memory of Rita Carneglia Hall, who passed away last Friday, March 20th, 2015, who would have been 90 this Thursday. She was born and raised here in California, the wife of Jack Hall, known for her grand holiday parties and her family dinners, and she was the mother to a very close friend of mine and constituent, Christine Carr. She was married for almost 50 years, described her marriage to her husband Jack as the perfect couple, almost like newlyweds, even as of last year. She was active in her church and the Italian Cultural Foundation, and authored 2 books during her lifetime. She's survived by her daughters Sue Nelson, Christine Carr, Luann Scully, and Mary Eichmeyer, and 6 grandchildren, and a great-grandchild is due this summer. And second of all, I have another in memoriam that has been incredibly personal for me and my family over the past few days. Over the weekend, we received news, and it was all over our papers here locally, that a hiker was killed up at Point Reyes when a 70-foot cliff collapsed And the person who passed away is a woman named Nancy Blum, who was my children's teacher in preschool over the past few years. And she was an adored teacher for everybody, every family at the Sarah Preschool in the Presidio. She had taught there for 10 years, affectionately known to everyone and my children as Teacher Nancy. She was an amazing professional teacher. As of last year, as I was taking the kids to school, I would often pick her up as she was running late to school down the hill and give her a ride. It's really a devastating loss, most importantly to her family, but certainly to the preschool community that I've been a part of for a number of years, and that so many San Francisco families are part of, and all of us that have the privilege of knowing her. There's a bit of background. She was born in Syracuse, New York. She was an avid hiker around the Bay Area, started recently biking to work all the time. We lived pretty close to each other, actually. She loved traveling, the museums. She's a fluent French speaker, and she loved spending time with our children at the school and outdoors. Nancy had one son who lives in Pittsburgh, Keith Kallenberg, and 3 grandsons, all very young. Her son Keith just received his PhD a few years ago from Carnegie Mellon and is still staying in Pittsburgh. Services for Nancy will be held this Sunday. Again, she was an amazing teacher for all the parents that knew her and the families. She'll be greatly missed, and just pray for her family and all the families that knew her in the school. That is a very small preschool community that is really feeling a great loss right now. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. To the remaining supervisors who have yet to introduce new business, we'll return to roll call for the introduction of new business after the 3 p.m. special orders. Madam President.
Okay, colleagues, at this time we have 2 3 p.m. special orders, and it is my understanding that both have requested to be continued. So at this time, I will ask the clerk to call the first 3 p.m. special order.
Items 20 through 23 comprise the special order at 3 p.m. for a public hearing of persons interested in the January 8, 2015 Planning Department's determination that the proposed project located at 53 State Street is categorically exempt from environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. Items 21 through 23 are the motions affirming or reversing the department's exemption and the preparation of findings.
Okay, colleagues, can we have a motion to excuse Supervisor Wiener? Motioned by Supervisor Tang, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Without objection, Supervisor Wiener, you're excused, but don't go too far. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. Given that Supervisor Wiener had to recuse himself, we did receive written confirmation from both the appellants and the project sponsor side, confirming that they all agree to a 2-week continuance. So pending public comment, I would like to make a motion to continue items 20 through 23 for 2 weeks.
Okay, and that will be a motion to continue the item until our April 7th meeting. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Campos. And at this time, I would like to ask, is there any member of the public who'd like to provide public comment on this item at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. On the motion to continue, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Aye. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 10 ayes.
Okay, this item is continued to the meeting of April 7, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next 3 p.m. special order?
Items 24 through 27 comprise the second special order at 3 p.m. for a public hearing of persons interested in the January 8, 2015 Planning Department's issuance of a community plan exemption for the proposed project at 340 Bryant Street, exempting the project from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. Items 25 through 27 are the motions affirming or reversing the department's exemption and the preparation of findings.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I also would like to request a continuance for 1 week to March Tuesday, March 31st, as we give a little bit more time to resolve between the two parties, and both parties have agreed to this continuance.
Okay, Supervisor Kim has made a motion for continuance to the meeting of March 31st, seconded by Supervisor Yee. Without objection, before we go there, I will open this item up to public comment. Are there any members of the public who'd like to provide any public comment on this specific item at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Can we take this without objection? Oh, we need a roll call vote? Okay.
On items 24 through 27, to continue them to March 31st, Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, this item is continued to the meeting of March 31st, 2015. Madam Clerk, can we return to roll call, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Kim, you're next up to introduce new business. Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, as part of a broader regional Plan Bay Area implementation effort that's led by the Association of Bay Area Governments staff, they're working with local jurisdictions and ABAG, as we call it, the Association of Bay Area Governments, the Administrative Committee, and the Regional Planning Committee that I sit on with our TA, Transportation Authority Chair Tilly Chang. We're developing a priority conservation area proposals for open space programs in urban areas as well as throughout the region. I think there are different kinds of PCAs, or priority conservation areas, throughout the region that really promote the natural systems, open space, the rural economy, and human health as well. And last December in 2014, we as a board passed a resolution authorizing a process nullifying the 4 priority conservation areas that were designated earlier by ABAG. And our San Francisco Planning Department was directed to study and select new priority conservation areas to be brought before this board before May 30th, 2015. So following that process, the Planning Department led a working group to study the topic, which consisted of 2 other city agencies, the Department of the Environment and the Rec and Park Department, as well as nonprofit agencies, but also the California Native Plant Society and the Greenbelt Alliance, to work collectively to determine new areas for nomination. And this is really important in maximizing and expanding open space in our urban areas. The agencies developed a new group of 4 PCAs, priority conservation areas, while incorporating the original ideas, but to more closely represent urban city policies that we've adopted over recent years. And we selected these different priority conservation areas using a more focused scientific approach to determine what areas are in the greatest need of support for open space in our city. The 4 PCAs selected by the working group include Palau Phelps Natural Area, Bayview Hill Natural Area, so it's really clear southeast neighborhoods of our city. Also, Green Connections in McLaren Park, Pivot, and number 4 was a crosstown trail connecting Twin Peaks bioregion with Glen Canyon. I think these new areas represent a collective program that will improve our city's open space, city lands, and parks, and I look forward to your support. Thanks so much to our Transportation Authority Chair Tilly Chang and many others on the Regional Planning Committee that I work on within the Association of Bay Area Governments for promoting urban areas as a key place for conservation. Also, I'm introducing today a hearing with my colleagues, Supervisors Yee, Kim, Avalos, Tang, and Campos. It's about language equality and multilingualism in the future of our city to make our city as great as it can be for the diverse language minority groups as possible. Nearly 40 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court in Lau versus Nichols established language rights and language equality as a key goal of equality and equity in school systems in cities. The Chinese for Affirmative Action, with a coalition of immigrant rights groups, advocated in the late 90s for equal access to services as a demand from immigrant communities Nearly one half of the population of San Francisco speak a language other than English in the home, and some 40% of the population are born outside of the U.S. of San Franciscans. So this is really about equal access, equality of languages, and equity in services for our communities. I wanted to thank the co-sponsoring supervisors, but also Supervisor David Chu that with me and others helped to update in 2009 our language access ordinance, or our language equality ordinance as I would call it. My office continues to work with the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs and the Immigrant Rights Commission and our community coalition, the Language Access Network, to ensure that adequate translation, interpretation services are provided to our limited English-speaking communities. I wanted to thank CAA, Caresson, and many others who for decades have worked on language equality. And Kinney Lau, the little kid from 1974 that went to Gene Parker Elementary School, like Supervisor Yee went to, I believe, that really, Kinney Lau and the parents in Chinatown united with other immigrant parents that really advocated for language equality and multilingualism as a key value of our city. I think this hearing request will look at the annual report of the Language Access Report by the Office of Civic Engagement, but also we'll be able to look at the ordinance that Supervisor Yee is working on translation services like the school district is doing to bring that within our city, or the ordinance that I and Supervisor Tang and others just passed to eliminate the tiered system so that all departments are held accountable to the needs of the immigrant and limited English-speaking communities as well. Lastly, since our implementation of the 2009 ordinance that Supervisor Chu and I advocated, the city's expanded our services not only to Chinese and Spanish-speaking communities with printed and written materials, but last year, as many of us know, the community successfully advocated the Filipino communities and immigrant communities to add Tagalog as a key required language the city must provide to the communities. In addition, OSEA, which is Office of Civic and Immigrant Engagement and Affairs, also provides Russian translation to our Russian-speaking community. Many of them live in the Richmond district, but also spread throughout the city as well. I look forward to the hearing with my colleagues to review the development of language access and language equality and multilingualism in our city within our various departments and agencies. We're working closely with immigrant community organizations to ensure that the departments are living up to our sometimes lofty but definitely really important language equality policies in our city. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have two items today, and then first I want to begin with a resolution that would, and I want to thank Supervisor Wiener for co-sponsoring, authorizing the placement of a sidewalk plaque in front of the Lexington Club, which is located at 3464 Lexington Street. Which unfortunately will be closing very shortly. The Lexington opened in 1997 as a neighborhood space for the dykes, queers, artists, musicians, and neighborhood folk who made up the community that surrounded it. And Lexington has truly succeeded in providing that community a space. For 18 years, it has been a place for a vibrant community. And it has really left its mark in that neighborhood, and we want to commemorate the contributions of this space by having a plaque placed by DPW at the sidewalk. So we look forward to working with our DPW department to make that happen. The next item is an item that I think I think all of us here at the board have had something to say about it, and that's the issue of the regulation of Airbnb, short-term rentals, whatever you want to call that. But today I am proud to be introducing legislation that will greatly increase the city's abilities to enforce our short-term rental law, this Airbnb law. This legislation essentially responds to what we have heard from our planning department staff. The staff that has been charged with the enforcement of this legislation has, in no uncertain terms, and very clear language indicated that the law as it currently is written is simply unenforceable. My legislation, this amendment, has a number of key components, and I want to begin by thanking Supervisors Avalos and Marr for co-sponsoring the legislation. And I know that there are a number of colleagues who have been working on this issue, including Supervisor Kim. I look forward to continuing to work with her as this item moves forward. But the first thing this set of amendments does, and let me be very clear that all of us who have talked about this may disagree about the specifics of how to regulate this industry, but all of us support short-term rentals. We know that short-term rentals are a part of San Francisco, that they are here to stay, and I know many people in my district and throughout the city who are involved in short-term rentals who are making contributions to our community. That said, I think that those of us who have been talking about this believe that there should be reasonable, fair regulation of this industry. And I respectfully submit that the law that was passed last year does not constitute what I think we would like to see, which is fair, reasonable regulation of this industry. The fact is that unless we are able to enforce the laws we pass, the laws become meaningless. And that's exactly what has happened to the Airbnb law. The regulations and requirements that it establishes are essentially a paper tiger because it has no teeth. The components of my amendments are the following. First, it sets a limit of 90 days for short-term residential rentals, regardless of whether it's hosted or unhosted. The current law limits unhosted rentals to 90 days, but allows hosted rentals without limitation year-round. The planning department has clearly told us that it is virtually impossible for them to enforce the 90-day limit for unhosted units because it's simply impossible for them to know for sure whether a unit is actually hosted or unhosted. They have said it would be that it would greatly improve enforcement if there was simply a clear guideline for both types of rentals. This 90-day limit will also help us protect the supply of permanent housing that is available to San Francisco because it limits the total number of days in a year that a home or apartment can be offered for tourist rentals. We want those units to be offered for housing in San Francisco. The second item that this amendment does is it requires hosting platforms to provide data to the planning department regarding the number of nights a unit or room is being rented. The planning department has stated repeatedly that they need more data to enforce the law. In fact, they have asked Airbnb and other platforms to provide that data. And the response from Airbnb has been, we will not provide it unless you subpoena the information. And even then, it seems that they would fight a subpoena as they have done in other jurisdictions like New York. My law would create a provision that requires hosting platforms like Airbnb who have access to data to provide monthly data to the planning department on the number of nights each unit is listed by the individuals who are registered. This way, the planning department has evidence of whether the 90-day limit has in fact been followed. Without being able to get that information, there is simply no way to verify compliance. The third item establishes fines for hosting platforms that list unregistered short-term rentals. This provision allows the city to levy a fine of up to $1,000 a day against internet-based hosting platforms if they offer tourists rentals on their sites, rentals for units that are not registered with the city. We know that there are thousands of units that are being rented, but in fact, when the hearing was held, only a few dozen units were actually registered with the city. A requirement that these units be registered is meaningless unless we actually impose penalties when units are listed without registration. The fourth item preserves residential neighborhoods by prohibiting short-term rentals in RH1D neighborhoods. RH1D neighborhoods are areas currently zoned for no commercial activity. We do not want to introduce commercial activity in these quiet family neighborhoods. For 50 years, the city has zoned and use planning to limit certain activities in these neighborhoods to essentially protect the character of those neighborhoods. And consistent with that intent, we want to include this requirement. And then finally, we expand the right of action, the private right of action, so that people affected by a nearby tourist rental can go to court to enforce the law. This provision allows those affected by a tourist rental the right to go to court to enforce city laws on short-term rentals. People affected could include, and there are a number of people that could be a part of this, that could be impacted by this, next-door neighbors, as well as tenants or owners who live in the building where the short-term rental unit is being offered. This provision will include actual damages, attorney's fees, and civil penalties of up to $1,000. We believe, and look forward to discussing this, that this provision is critical in terms of ensuring enforcement because we need a meaningful private right of action to supplement the enforcement that is being done by city staff. To date, the city attorney's office, because of the work that, the fact that there has been no violations at the planning department, we've only seen 2 claims against a host of illegal short-term rentals. We know that there's a lot more activity that is actually taking place. A neighbor, as the law currently stands, has to hire a private investigator to prove that the violation took place. Something that is very difficult and costly and basically impossible for most residents. If we do not create a meaningful private right of action with adequate damages, only the wealthy could afford to bring claims to court and actually see enforcement happen. This provision empowers all San Franciscans, regardless of income, to make sure that their rights are protected. I look forward to discussing these items with my colleagues. I look forward to discussing my proposal as well with Mayor Lee. And we know that there's a broad coalition of individuals who has been working on this issue for quite some time. And we look forward to continuing our conversations and dialogue with those individuals. The bottom line is this, that this law is a mess. It is a mess that needs to be cleaned up, and we need to clean it up as soon as possible. Let's get started. Thank you. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Seeing no other names on the roster, Madam President, that concludes the roll call for the introduction of new business.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please read public comment?
At this time, the public may comment generally for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, including the item on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, item 31. Public comment is not allowed on items already subject to public comment at a board committee. Pursuant to the board rules, you may direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors, nor to the audience. Speakers using translation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify. And if you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and remove the document when you'd like the screen to return to live coverage of the meeting.
Okay, first speaker, please.
A few weeks ago, I got on the Michael Savage show, and what he fails to fully grasp, and what you fully fail to grasp, is that when we're dealing with Islam, there's a book by Craig Wynn, that's with 2 N's, Prophet of Doom, and he studied Islam for 10,000 hours and is very nicely categorized according to subject matter, chapter and verse in the Qurans and the Hadiths, various things about the religion, that we have to read the documents themselves to learn what they believe. And it's so important. It's very sad that this book, Prophet of Doom by Craig Wynn, is out of print. But you should read that. You are our leaders, and I've never heard one peep from anybody here about what Islam actually teaches. Not a peep. Okay, the guy Muhammad taught Jesus was not killed. The guy married a 9-year-old. According to his wife, he received revelations while he was doing it with her. Okay, according to his wife. Now, I compare Muhammad with Jesus. What a difference is there between Muhammad and Jesus? Now, Christians, millions of us will be celebrating Palm Sunday. It's coming up. These two books that you're seeing here have to do with the prophecy in Daniel 9 that give us the actual year of Palm Sunday and the crucifixion of the Lord Jesus Christ. It's incredible. But as he rode in on the donkey, fulfilling the prophecy in Zechariah chapter 9 and Psalm 118, the scribes, or rather the Pharisees, not the scribes, the Pharisees said, "Master, rebuke thy disciples." And Jesus said, if these were all together to hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. Now, what did he mean by that? Well, he was emphasizing the fact that only in the Bible do we have prophecy. Jesus said, "Behold, I tell you before it comes to pass, so that when it does come to pass, you may believe that I am he."
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I got it. God bless you, supervisors. God bless the city and county of San Francisco. Today, what I would like to talk about is maybe there needs to be, in the inner city of San Francisco, maybe there needs to be no public transportation. No private transportation, okay? People in this city, who drive, okay, a lot of them don't respect pedestrians. They don't respect people in chairs. And if they hit them, they hit a person in a chair. They hit me in a chair, hit this young lady in a chair. Boy, we are in bad shape, okay? That puts us at ground zero pretty much. But the city is too compact. The inner city is too compact. We don't need drivers. We have great public transportation, and people need to walk or ride bikes. A lot of people do, so why can't they do it? In the inner city of San Francisco, we do not need people. People can jump on the Muni, which is one of the greatest systems in the United States of America, or like I said, they can get a great workout by walking or taking a bicycle to work. Thank you, supervisors, and God bless you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President Breed and supervisors. I'm picking up good city vibrations. You're sending me excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. I'm getting city good vibrations with all this legislation. And don't you think it's a shame, 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 the way we haven't had any rain. It's a shame, 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 the way it's so dry. It's a shame, 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 we want those fire hydrants up, tied up high. It's a shame, 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 we certainly do need rain. It's a shame, shame, shame. And I just want to say, let me be there in your city morning. Let me be there in your city night. Let me change those items wrong and make it right, make it right. Let me wander through this district wonderland that we certainly do share. All I ask you is let me be there. All I ask you also to do, I sure hope you care. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Vladimir. I am 83 years old, Holocaust survivor who is 1.5 years on the street out of my house. I am homeless. I asked you so many times for help to bring me back to my home because 83 years old person should to have a home, not anything else. But you are dealing like Gestapo board of supervisor with your mayor, Chinese, and president. Don't you afraid that God will punish you like it's punished Kennedy family for sending 500 women and children to gas chamber in Auschwitz?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
First of all, I'd like to say y'all underpaid, and the hardest workers in the city is the fire department. I am Dwayne Gaines. I'm a native of San Francisco. I graduated in 1983. I remember Moscone. That was my mama boy. Feinstein was my daddy boy. You know, it's a change. Y'all hands is tied. Y'all can only do so much. I just want to say, I'm still living in Alice Griffin, and I'm a healthy man and I'm not working. I don't understand it. I got a nonprofit. That's another episode. But I just want to give y'all a presentation. I don't want it to be today. As a native of San Francisco, as a graduate out of Balboa High School, I've been here from Moscone all the way up. I'd like to give you a presentation of my program. I will be going in front of some GM and some presidents to close Alice Griffin down, and it'll be presented by Just Stop Killing Blacks. That's my program, but we changed the name to Just Stop the Killing, sponsored by the People of Actions, Brothers Keepers, and the Tenant Associated presented. It's going to be Mary Mary or MC Hammer, and we're going to close it down. I have a venue, I have everything. I just ask for your support. The 49ers gone. This place has changed. It's about money now. Every time I look up space, but y'all can do so much, and that's how the economy is going. Thank you. Please, Supervisor, District 10. I love you. I think you're doing a great job. 20 people on your back. Please let me give you a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Thanks to our democratic system for giving me the right to speak. My name is Thomas McDonough. I want to talk about transportation and transit matters as it pertains to transportation of tech workers to and from their jobs in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. So specifically, I want to talk about pay and benefits for the drivers and of those vehicles, which can accommodate up to 80 passengers. The standard of pay is about $20 per hour. Benefits are minimal, oftentimes, if provided, come out of the driver's gross wages. Some drivers show up for work at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. in the morning, and they may finish work at 8 p.m. at night, later that night. From mid-morning to early afternoon, there's a split shift, during which time the drivers are not compensated. I find this work system, which was basically created in its current mode about 2004, terribly inadequate. It indicates total disrespect for work and the role it plays in our economy. It indicates terrible greed on the part of all the decision makers involved. It indicates tremendous selfishness by what can only be described as shallow, small-minded decision makers. Capitalism, in order to remain strong, must have a very strong element of fair play built into its foundation, which also includes the vital ingredients of ethics and integrity. Payroll is a major component within the economy. It helps sustain the individual and the family. It also helps sustain the state and the federal government because of payroll taxes, thereby a contributor to the solvency of state and federal government. So wages...
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed and other victims of the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 14 meters and 10 blocks from sea level. I rise to note that as I celebrate the solar year, which begins on the spring equinox, I can now offer my personal best wishes for the new year to this House and to our beloved City and County of San Francisco. I can also offer some explanation of my terminology in public comment. A cabal is a group of people involved in a conspiracy. The cabal that you are members of is the one which continues to fail to hold the mayor accountable for his lack of compliance with the Charter, Section 3.100. And the cabal that you are victims of is the one that refuses to allow you, in the face of population growth, in the face of coming climate disaster, in the face of radical technological advance, to address the evolving needs of our home with any real understanding or adequate tools. And on a personal note, the angiogram went well, confirmed that any issues were due to the stress of where and with whom I live, and not age or decrepitude. And finally, I would share that cooler heads do not necessarily prevail. My head is definitely cooler, yet you still don't buy many of my arguments.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Members of the Board of Supervisors, Ray Hartz, Director of San Francisco Open Government. On the screen right now is an excerpt I'd like to read to you, and this is from the opinion of the United States Supreme Court written for the majority by Justice Anthony Kennedy in Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. But the government may commit a constitutional wrong when by law it identifies certain preferred speakers. By taking the right to speak from some and giving it to others, the government deprives the disadvantaged person or class of the right to use speech to establish worth, standing, and respect for the speaker's voice. The government may not, by these means, deprive the public of the right and privilege to determine for itself what speech and speakers are worthy of consideration. The First Amendment protects speech and speaker and the ideas that flow from each. That being said, here's a list of 19 orders of determination I have received from the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, and I'd like to use the word of the previous speaker, the cabal. Because basically, these are 19 representatives of the city government who have in one way or another interfered with my ability to speak, to have that speak accurately represented in the official record, the minutes of meetings, and have denied me access to records that are public records they know I have the right to, which I need to effectively speak. The latest member here is Supervisor Farrell, who decided he didn't feel any need to reply to an immediate disclosure request. And just recently, in fact, this morning, I filed complaints against 4 of you because last week I sent immediate disclosure requests to all of the members of this board, and only 2 of you replied by the deadline. 2 replied late and said they needed an extension, and 4 of you didn't bother at all. What is it about the Sunshine Ordinance that after 20 years of it being in place that you and your staff don't seem to understand?
Sir, your time is up. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Why do you interrupt people?
Next speaker, please. Next speaker, you're out of order. Next speaker.
Good evening, San Francisco. My name is Ace. I'm on the case with happy announcements that I am in semi-retirement from an activist, but I'm transitioning over into an entrepreneur with the communications of something I think I have the skills. What is it? Paul. I got to check that out. Ooh, that is a strong word. I'm sure it has some strong meanings to it. But my presentation today is simply of transitioning period. over 20 years. Y'all, I've been here at City Hall over 20 years as an activist. I did some mighty historical things, brought the Fillmore Center here. But I'm also happy to announce most of my work, I reached the pedestal. I've also accomplished in San Francisco, in my community, where the OCII is coming to the Western Addition to explain of all the, how can you call it, missed money that has been spent over the years of urban renewal. We call it Negro removal. I've also been campaigning and having the housing authority that will be coming to the Western Addition at the Rosa Parks in October. So I've done my work for over 20 years. Now it's time to have some action taken. I've just met with my supervisor district, Supervisor London Breed's office, and we're talking now about bringing our community up to date, what's been going on in the Fillmore after 4 or 5 black businesses have been closing in the last 18 months. We want to know about other things that have been going on in our community. And I think some of that needs to rub off into the city and county as to, I've been hearing about a lot of corruption. Hold up, Ace, you're not an activist. But I guess it'll speak for itself. People think this city is a city that knows how. But if they were really here in City Hall, and I could tell it all, it is the most corrupt, not because of most of y'all, it is the most racist, most biased city undercover in the United States. Although we smile and say we the city that knows how, but I got another story.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti, 2 Townsend, South Beach Manor Apartments. 1950s, there was a polio epidemic. Research was done. Why? Vaccines. Vaccine was inside me. And then they found out some of those vaccines were contaminated, and they tried to figure out, research in how those could be fixed. Can I have the overhead and a focus, please? Hello, can we focus? Oh. Okay. Oh, out of the way. Let's see what we got. Okay. Again. Seconds. Last time, this story of an investigation into the contamination of that polio vaccine, and in the late 50s, and that sets up, and that's Dr. Mary's Monkey. If you can pick it up, it's a good read. And that picks up Lee and Me, the book of some gal that met Lee Harvey Oswald during that polio vaccine research. He deserves a witness. I saw him die on television, same as I saw the plane fly into the second tower in New York City on TV. You know, after 50 years, if somebody wants to give Lee Harvey Oswald a witness, he does. He deserves it. And I'd like to give a shout out for Christina Olage as a courageous woman who was here at one time. Thank you,
sir. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. You can come to the podium here to the left of my left.
Okay. Yes, you can hear me. In honor of Women's Day, my name's Larry Edmund Juicy. I want to put some women pictures here. Harriet Tubman, Modessa. Go out and see this called The Birthright. And this is a movie they got out called The Tales of the Grim Reaper. It's about how crack cocaine in the 80s went to L.A. and abused them like in 89 that the Weekly wrote about San Francisco Bayview. This is a movie about Project Level called The Long Walk Home by kids having a better outlook in our city. You should see that movie called Project Level. Project 11music.com. This is You Know the Queen is Coming to Town, Aretha Franklin. And this is on in 14, we're going to have National Day of Action at City Hall. They want people to come out and don't go to school and work that day. So this is me as a transgender in my early days. And this is me as a marijuana advocate today, Reefer Madness. What I want to also ask people to send me pictures at 415-sfwp@gmail.com. Send the pictures you have in the city of me at my email. And you can also go enter 1961-2015 so that you can see what I go through living in the TL. This is a letter that I did fighting with racism, sexism, and xenophobia. And the guy who wrote Black Lives Matter, Cornel West, mentioned xenophobia 19 times in the book. I had only heard xenophobia at Co-op and Dr. Amos Brown. So xenophobia exists. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Madam Clerk, can you please read the next item?
Item 31 is being considered for immediate adoption. It is a resolution to extend by 30 days the prescribed time within which the Planning Commission may review the ordinance amending the regulation of short-term residential rentals.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Breed. I'm just making one small amendment, and that is just to change the word resolution to motion. So it is a motion extending by 30 days the prescribed time within which the Planning Commission may render its decision on an ordinance. And this is the trailing legislation to the short-term rentals legislation that passed back in the fall.
Okay, so Supervisor Kim has made a motion to make an amendment, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Can we take this without objection? The amendment passes, and on the underlying item, item number 31, as amended, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, this resolution as amended is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following individuals. On behalf of Supervisor Wiener, for the late Miss Farrellyn T. Powell. On behalf of Supervisor Yee, for the late Mr. James Lim. And on behalf of Supervisor Farrell, for the late Miss Rita Carniglia Hall and Miss Nancy Blum.
Okay, colleagues, this brings us to the end of our agenda. Madam Clerk, is there any more business before us today?
Madam President, that concludes our business for today.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, colleagues.
SF Gov TV.